All right, I've got a really spicy one for you today. And the title and thumbnail are not clickbait. Like, the reason this deck is so strong, or one of the reasons this deck is so strong, is Galactus. I want to jump straight into it. I call this deck options. I guess you could call it bounce. It's my own take on the archetype, and at least from what I've seen, there is anything like this. Okay, so here's the story. I got to like rank 97 or 98 in the first week of the season, and then somehow tilted off the face of the earth right the way back down to rank 70. And so I've just been experimenting with lots of different things, trying to see what works, what doesn't, really trying some weird stuff. And then I found this morning. I was about rank 74. Right now I'm rank, I think, 87. And it's just this deck has won me so many cubes. It's unreal. I'm intending to get to infinite with this deck. I'll keep you updated on that journey. I'll update it on YouTube and possibly even stream the rest of the climb on Twitch. But you've got to play this now, because I'm telling you, when the patch comes out, this deck isn't going to be anywhere near as good, and it's not going to have that same shock factor. And here is why. The key parts of this deck: Nick Fury, Green Goblin, Hobgoblin. Okay, here is the reason why. Play Green Goblin on turn 3. Sometimes, rarely, you get to play Hobgoblin early due to Project Pegasus or Elysium or some just any way that allows you to play him before turn 5. You play Nick Fury on turn 5. Nick Fury gives you Galactus. Galactus wins you the freaking game. Okay, jokes aside, that is not this deck's main win condition. It's certainly a win condition, and I have won several games that way, and I'll be showing them at the end of the video, so stay tuned for those. But that's not the deck's main win condition. This deck has plenty of win conditions, the main one being the Collector, though. So the Collector is obviously strong in a bunch of different decks. It used to be strong back in the day with Swarm. It's strong typically with Moon Girl, Quinjet, and Devil Dino, and that combination of cards. But I kind of figured the Collector probably is good enough with just Agent 13, Beast, and Nick Fury. And the reason for that is that you can use Lockjaw to jump things in and out of your deck. And typically, with Agent 13, with Beast, with Nick Fury, it's not uncommon to get the Collector up to 6 or 7, which for a 2-drop isn't bad, and it's pretty consistent to get to that level. Not only that, the good thing about the Collector is that it's a card that your opponent doesn't necessarily expect to get that big, so they don't really play around it growing. When suddenly on turn 5 you play Nick Fury and the Collector gains 3 stats, and you've put another 7 stats on the board elsewhere, it can be a lot for your opponent to deal with. The other main win condition of this deck, the other thing that makes it so good, is Nick Fury. It adds 3 random 6-drop cards to your hand. Now, yes, Galactus is one of them, and you can certainly win with the surprise factor there. But the thing is, 6-drop cards, they are very varied, and it's very difficult to play around all of them at the same time. You play Nick Fury on turn 5. On turn 6, they now have to play around Arnim Zola, Leader, Doctor Doom, the Spectrum and Hela and Onslaught and Apocalypse are the kind of cards that don't really do that much. Your opponent has to play around Odin. Your opponent has to play around Heimdall. That is definitely a card that can win you some games out of nowhere. Your opponent has to play around Ultron. I've won games with Ultron. Your opponent has to play around Magneto. Your opponent has to play around Giganto. I've never had Agatha Harkness from Nick Fury. I wonder if you can actually get her from that. It's just never happened to me. Weird. So yeah, I mean, there are bad cards that you can get from it too. The Infinite isn't great. You've obviously just played a card. You can't play it on turn 6. Giganto has limited use. Destroyer, I've actually, I think, won 1 or 2 games with it. It is powerful, and in certain situations where your opponent's played Armor or Cosmo, it can come out of nowhere and win the game. But typically, it is Heimdall, Doctor Doom, Leader, Arnim Zola, Odin, Magneto that can really mess your opponent up if they're not playing around the right thing. And putting your opponent in the position where they don't know if you're going to Leader or if you're going to Doctor Doom, or if you're going, it's impossible for them to work out. The beautiful thing about Nick Fury is it doesn't just give you 1 6-cost card, it gives you 3 to choose from. So chances are, one of them is going to be decent, and one of them is going to give you the potential to win the game. Wasp and Yellow Jacket are both in there just to sort of bounce around with Lockjaw. Yellow Jacket isn't amazing, but isn't actually that bad. Like, having a consistent 0-cost card so that on turn 3 you can jam Lockjaw and Wasp and Yellow Jacket, that's worth considering. And these things up the consistency of you getting your Hobgoblin onto your opponent's side of the board and you getting Nick Fury out nice and early. Of course, the earlier you get Nick Fury, the more time you have to plan around the 6-cost card that you're playing. One of the other beautiful things about this deck is that your opponent rarely knows when they've got you beat, and it is the kind of deck where you can just steal 8 cubes from your opponent because, you know, you pulled that leader and you know that it's a checkmate type situation, or you pulled that Magneto and you know that your opponent isn't necessarily going to expect the Green Goblin that you played in that lane over there to move to this lane over here. Or you pull Heimdall and you know that your opponent's going to have no idea what happens when all of your cards have suddenly moved one position to the left. The surprise factor that this deck gives you is great. There are other niche little combos that you can pull off from time to time, like playing Black Widow on turn 2, into Beast on turn 3, into Black Widow again on turn 4, drastically restricting the amount of card draw that they get. This is my absolute favorite role with Galactus. I realized that I had my opponent checkmated. The Space Throne, my opponent's got a Green Goblin there. The only problem was, it looks like I'm winning even without the Galactus. So, on turn 6, which was the penultimate turn, because Limbo was one of the locations, I threw the game. I played the worst possible cards that I could in the other 2 locations to make my opponent think that they had a chance. No, to think they were guaranteed to get 8 cubes. And then I took that away from them. Honestly, this deck has been freaking awesome. I hope that you enjoy the gameplay that I'm about to show. Some of these games were so cool, and I'll see you in the next one.
Squad still a little light.
Wind, aid my hand.
I still believe in heroes.
Time's up.
Squad still a little light. They dig up this time.